goes over to the other side of her family. Sofa. It's pretty gross.
Oh my God. Allison lives around here. Alley Cat. I don't remember where does she live. Does she live in? Dad, guess what? I heard on the news alert that the job.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. Just want to remind you, we'll get started in just a few minutes. Just want to remind you to mute your mics so no one hears your private conversations.
I raised my hand when I want to talk.
We're going to start implementing that rule.
Hey, this is Brenton. There was a question that came from attendees about being muted. They didn't have audio options, and I tried to respond and I exited out. So just for those of you that are attendees and not panelists, whenever you have a question, just raise your hand and we can unmute you to speak. But you won't have any audio options until we actually go in and unmute you. And Bambi, it looks like as of right now, I don't see that you have a quorum. I think we only have 4 people. We need 6.
Okay, who are the people that we're waiting on?
So as of right now, I don't see Nicole Banks is on. Randall Brown is not on. I don't see Julie Foster Hagen at the moment. I don't see Dr. Hyacinth McKee, Mary Tarver, or Crystal White, but I believe Crystal, I know for sure will not be able to join us today. But as of last I checked, we should have a quorum for this time, so I'm not sure where everyone is. If you are on the committee, if you could turn your camera on briefly, just so I can make sure that you are here. I do see your name. I just want to make sure that the 4 of you I have are actually present. I do see Jill, Bambi. I don't know if Kim and Carmen, if you could just put your camera on real quick. There's Carmen and I see Kim. Perfect. Kelly, I don't know if you were trying to talk to us. If you were, you're muted. I'm not sure.
So Brenton, I think Julie is getting on. And so we'll need one more person when Julie gets on, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a couple minutes late. I'm on now.
Hi, Julie. We're just waiting on one more person to have a quorum.
Okay.
Brenton is reaching out to a couple of the members about getting on. We'll wait until 1:10 just to see if they can get on. Brenton, do we have a quorum?
Sorry, working on it. If everybody that's on the committee could turn on their cameras, please. No. I do know Mary is trying to get on. I just sent her some of the meeting information. So if we give her a second, I think she should be able to get on. But as of right now, let's see.
So Brenton, while we're waiting for her to get on, we could start off with the welcome and introductions and just, who is present, if that's okay. So first off, welcome everyone. Sorry for the delay. Brenton, can you name who on the committee is in attendance?
Okay, so I think, let's see. Kim Bazile, are you on? Yep, I see Kim. Carmen Setnor. She was on a moment ago.
Yes, she said I'm here.
Okay. Jill Eagley.
Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Britton.
Julie Hagan, I see her here.
Okay.
Bambi, you are here. And Mary Tarver.
I'm here.
So as long as nobody leaves, you have a quorum.
Great. Okay. Thank you all. So we'll go ahead and get started with the next item, try and catch up on our time with the approval of the January meeting summary.
October.
I'm sorry. It has January on there, but it should be October.
Hey, this is Mary. I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
We have a second?
Yeah, I second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mary Tarver, second by Kim Bazile. Any opposition? Any abstentions? So moved. Next, we have on our agenda the Office of Behavioral Health report by Kristen Savicki. Kristen on?
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Okay.
Will someone put that on? Excellent, already putting that on screen. Perfect. I don't know how readable that is to folks on the Zoom. But I will just summarize. Again, this is the Q2 report for the use of these funds for behavioral health clients. And nothing too exciting to note. We have several LGEs with, good, so starting on the child tab with the Consumer Care Resources Funds, we have several LGEs making good progress with expenditure of the funds. We have a couple of LGEs with zero expended to date. In most cases, those are LGEs that utilize their federal funding first. So they essentially don't report any use of the state general funds initially until they exhaust the allocated federal funding, and then they catch up towards the end of the year. Some of the uses for the funding reported by different LGEs are things sort of typical types of requests for behavioral health clients, including support for school attendance, like school uniforms, support for maintaining home placement, such as furniture, utility bills, rental assistance, that sort of thing. Any questions on the consumer care resources portion of the report before I move on to the other portions of the report?
Dr. Savicki, when you said they use their federal funds and then they go to the state funds, is that that's a requirement, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, okay. There's several of them. Yeah, they use they use mental health block grant funding, and there's a requirement that be exhausted by a certain date. So yeah, they do use those first, and then they move on to the kind of bucket of state general funding that they use for the similar purpose.
Okay.
So,
Thank
so a couple of the LGEs where you see $0 expended, that's a typical pattern over the course of the year that we see $0 expended for the first half of the year, and then we start seeing them using their state general funds later on in the year.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll move on to the flexible family funding. Again, this is typically pretty well expended by LGEs, given that it's a popular program, and typically wait lists are maintained. So they are pretty, most folks are pretty close to the 50% expended. We had one LGE that had some difficulties last year getting all their slots filled. They are back up into compliance at this point. I'm happy to report that they are now have over 90% of their slots filled, and continuing to work on. I think they may have 1 or 2 open slots that they're continuing to work on filling, but good progress on that front as well. So any questions, and then I can just go to the adult tab if there's no questions on this.
I had a question. I'm sorry, Brenton.
Oh yeah, no, please.
Brenton changed it. On the, which one is it that has spent the 34%? I can't see from.
I think that's North Louisiana, and then that's the they are the folks who, yes, just verifying that on my report. Yep. It's low because early in the fiscal year they didn't have all the slots filled. That's the they had struggled to kind of catch up in filling all their slots. They had been working through their wait list and having a hard time getting folks brought into those slots in a timely way. I think COVID has been a bit of a barrier there as well. So they are back up to having most of their slots filled, but it means that they didn't, there was some funding that they could have expended earlier in the year that they didn't, because they didn't have the slots filled at that time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So on the adult tab, similar story. Certainly one LGE, we just went ahead and had expended all of these funds, a couple of them actually. And then the LGE with the $0 expended, that's capital area, which similarly does a expenditure of federal funding first, and then they get to their state general funding for this purpose. And I think that I'll just go ahead and respond to the question in the chat. I think the question, and pop in and let me know if I'm wrong about this, is the question about the waiting list for the flexible family funding? I'm going to assume that, because that was my, okay. So for the flexible family funding, no, there's a, that's would you mind, Brandon, would you mind going back to the flexible family fund report just to have that on screen? So the flexible family fund, there's designated number of slots that each LGE has, and each family signed up for a slot gets that monthly cash subsidy that supports the family to be able to maintain a child in the home. So there's certainly a range of other services that families can receive at any time based on different program eligibility, but LGEs do only have a dedicated number of slots for the flexible family funds, the cash subsidy program. So on the wait list really does mean on the wait list that you're waiting for one of those slots to open up. Those slots do open up because they are for kids, and kids grow up. So that's typically how those either a child drops out of eligibility or they or they turn 18 and then the slot opens up. But certainly a child with behavioral health needs would be receiving a great deal more services than the cash subsidy. This is just one supplemental program to help with families to financially be able to support a child with additional needs in the home.
Sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting myself. So we have any other questions for Dr. Savicki with Office of Behavioral Health? Any public comments?
I don't see any hand raised or any chats.
Hyacinth, is she says she's not signed in as a panelist.
She was moved over.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Dr. McGee. Okay, so next we'll move on to OCDD. Julie Foster Hagan or Tanya Murphy.
And I'm going to turn it over to Tanya. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. So I guess I'll scroll over and see which.
I think you muted yourself, Tanya.
Sure did. I'm back. So this is the Act 378 Developmental Disability Report for the second quarter. I do see a couple of LGEs whose percentages are low. I know that for Imperial Calcasieu, they've expended 17%, and they're continuing to recover from the devastation from Hurricane Laura and Delta, and in combination with the national health emergency that has, greatly impacted their ability to spend their individual and family support funds. Many of the people that they would typically spend that money on are not there right now. So they're struggling to get those funds spent. Again, I think every time I mention that this does not include the December expenditures, so it's not a full count of the second quarter. But we have served 2,451 people so far since July 2020, spending $2.4 million so far statewide. The Metropolitan mentioned that they continue to have some issues because of the day programs being closed. They are working to implement a virtual day program with the ARC, but the implementation has gone a little slower than they anticipated. But Metropolitan Human Services District continues to explore other avenues to get their IFS money spent. Northeast Delta also indicated that the day hab and voc programs being closed is making it difficult to get their IFS money spent as they would in other years. Any questions about IFS?
Tanya, I have a question. You were talking about Metropolitan having trouble because of the day programs not being open. How much of are they spending on state general funds for day programs? Or do these people not qualify for waivers?
Either they don't qualify because they don't have Medicaid, or their needs haven't risen to the need to have a waiver offer sent to them. And so there's a mixture of individuals that can't qualify or just haven't had a waiver offer sent to them. And
I guess my concern is that if we're using direct state general funds when we could be tapping into the federal portion that our waivers pay for, and like is everything being done to make sure that that's happening?
Well, I think that that's been an issue that we've talked about quite a bit. Should everybody who's using IFS funds get a waiver to supplement instead. And, at this point, we don't have a waiting list for waivers, but if we were to take every single individual that was getting IFS funds, we would not be able to provide waiver slots to individuals who were in crisis and needed a waiver slot. So we kind of have to, ride the line in between. We have to use IFS funds in combination with giving out waiver slots. But we did at the very beginning of starting the tiered waiver process with waiver. We said, shouldn't everybody who's using IFS to go to vocational get a supports waiver offer? But we just have to be more diligent about how we spend that money and the waiver slots that go. And if families are satisfied with what they're getting, then it's kind of staying. If they have need for services that the IFS can't meet, then we would obviously do another sun screening and determine if they need a waiver instead.
So is it like y'all have done something to look at like the cost effectiveness? So what you're saying is basically it costs less to use the IFS, what we're using in IFS funding, than what it would to be the state funds to match for their waivers. Because if we talk about, does that make sense? Is it just, if it costs less to use the state general funds to pay for these services, then that's fine. But if it's costs less to give them a waiver for what the state pays for their waiver, then that would be saving money. So that's the point of my question.
Julie, do you have anything to, because this is something that we've gone around and around about, deciding we didn't want to give every single person a waiver slot because we would then have a waiting list for a waiver again.
Well, that is part of it, but we have worked to try to educate people. There's also kind of a difference in the way that we look at it when we're working with the person. And so, for example, if you're using IFS, the individual and family support for IFS, and it may be like some families will call and there's just a temporary need. So it may be that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of examples off the top of my head and I'm having trouble here. So it may just be that the family, grandma helps support and there's some natural supports in place. Something's happened where for a short period of time, the person might need some extra help while, I don't know, someone's recovering, or just like there's a short-term need for IFS where it's not a long-term need. They're not going to long-term and on a regular basis need that IFS. And so we try to also look at that. So sometimes, or just a brief period of respite, and maybe they only need that, once or twice a year. And is it more efficient than to use IFS in that way, as opposed to having a waiver offer when it's not something that they're consistently needing and it's not necessarily an urgent or emergent need. So it is part of what Tanya is saying, and that's why we have to be able to look at it in the way that we do. But it also is looking at kind of what is the intensity of that need, or is it short-term versus something that you're going to need throughout the year for waiver? I don't know how well I just explain that, but it's also the individual circumstances, I think, that we have to look at. That's what we've been educating folks on.
I mean, that makes sense, but has there been looking at those people who get this support to pay for these day programs all year long? Like it's something you could say, this is something continuous. We know that they're going to utilize it. And is that looked at, or has that been looked at? I don't know. It might be a small number. We might be talking about something that's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have that data specifically. I know we were trying to drill down to get better info through participant services on what those were. Tanya, I don't know that we've had the full year of that to be able to really kind of drill down and analyze that or not. I know you were working on that.
Yeah, that's one of the reports that we're going to be going over today, that kind of shows what money is being spent on what service for all of last fiscal year.
Mm-hmm. So we can look at last fiscal year and potentially drill down on the number that are being used in day program just to help inform us and help us look at that and make some decisions, Bambi. If that's what you're asking, then yes, we know we have not done that, but yes, we can do that.
Any other questions on the IFS?
We had a chat, a message from Karanda Corley. It asked if for any reason they're not able to create the virtual daycare service, can that money be provided to the families for their use?
Yeah, with individual and family support, we don't just provide money to the families. We do that with a cash subsidy or the flexible family fund. We give money, but with individual and family support, we have to do an agreement with the family for a specific service. It is a cost reimbursement is the way it's described. And so the family pays for whatever the service is, and then we reimburse them for what they've spent. We can't just give them cash for without a specific service that it's going to. But if there's something else the family needs that, they can say, well, they're not going to day have, but we need personal care attendant services or something else, then they can certainly ask for that service in exchange. And I'm sure they're doing that. Flexible family fund, a little higher percentage. They're at 49%, which is pretty typical for second quarter. Flexible family fund is easier to project, and the cash is just $258 a month, goes to each person that is eligible. So they're right on track for second quarter numbers.
And can you explain why 3 is so low, 39%? It's in the comments, I think.
I don't see anything in the comments for South Central. It looks like they're low on the slots being filled. And I know when the pandemic began, we were saying don't fill new flexible family fund slots, shift that money over to individual and family support. So they probably got behind on the number of slots that they had filled, and they're working on building that back up. So we can move on to the Act 73 compliance report. So this report shows you the total state general fund amount that was awarded to each LGE, the amount that's equal to 9% of that state general fund, how much money was budgeted by each LGE to equal that 9%, and then how much they've expended so far, and then the percentage of the 9%. So of course, by the end of the year, the goal is 100%. Statewide, we're at 44. Minus the December invoices. So that's a good percentage. Most of the LGEs are doing really well, getting to that 100%. Any questions about the Act 73 compliance?
Tanya, do you want to move to the approved pending funding report for the quarter, or do you want to hit the IFS data from last year? Which one would you prefer to do first?
We can do the IFS approved pending funding. It looks like that's the next one on the agenda. This is the individual and family support approved but pending funding statewide.
We'll say this is a report. I don't know how to make it show better on y'all's screen, but it might be easier if you want more of a breakdown of kind of what's been spent. You could possibly just look at the chart here.
So I guess you would look at this and say capital area still has money in the budget. So why are there some requests that are approved pending funding if they've got money available? But what they do is they'll fund what they can, but they don't want to spend all of their money at the beginning of the year and then run out by the end. So some of these are a little lower priority. I think you can see that all of the priority levels are threes. There's some there at the top that's priority 2.
I'm not gonna use it. I'm just gonna use it cold.
They'll fund the priority 2s first, and then the 3s. But capital area is they've got one request there that's for $11,000. That's a lot, 16,000. So they may not be able to fund all of those and still be able to serve as many people as possible. Got a few other LGEs that are reporting on this year. I think last year it was only Region 2, but we've got Jefferson Parish in there this year with a couple of approved pending funding. Any questions on this one? This will be a good report to keep an eye on for next quarter and the quarter after that, if it's the same requests or if they get funded and then there's other ones on there, so we can compare. Okay, so the next report is the IFS request by fiscal year. This was brought up for discussion at the last meeting, but there was so much information. People felt like they wanted to, review the report first before discussing it. And so, I don't really have anything to report about it, but we could look at Metropolitan Human Services District and look at vocational employment supports. They had 30 contracts.
Tanya, are you looking at the specific breakdown page?
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Right.
want to make sure I go to the right one. Okay.
Yeah, with the Metropolitan Human Services District. And if you go to the fiscal year with vocational, they spent $147,000 with 36 vocational contracts. 37 for the full fiscal year. That's just Metropolitan. But so if you go to the breakdown for each LGE, you can see what service.
Can you go back up to that? So I just want to make sure that, so encumbered means that's what they budgeted. And I assume based on the COVID, they didn't spend that?
Right. Right. They did an agreement with somebody for a certain amount of money, and then it didn't get spent.
So if we're looking at based on, from my question, then if you take out COVID, they would have spent about $300,000 on 37 people. Is what they
Right.
expect.
And all 10 LGEs are broken down, each one here. So did anybody have a chance to really look at this? Did you have any specific questions about the breakdown of the services that were purchased with the individual family support last fiscal year?
I mean, the thing that kind of stuck out to me was when you have it, diapers, disposable garments, like that seems to be a big number for the state general funds.
Yes, always.
And so and there's just something to consider whenever we talk about Medicaid and services. I know that was on like our long list of things we want to advocate for that got cut down, but that is a big expense. And then also the personal care assistance, a PCA, that's still a large number. So how many of those people, I guess that's the same question for the employment supports. Like, are we looking at, are there people who are using that year round and it'd be more cost efficient to put them on a waiver? I mean, if people are getting what they need, that's what we want, but I'm also about, being, using our money most effectively too. So.
Right. And I think one question to also think about, to figure out, from the perspective of the waiver, when you're doing a screening for urgency of need and you're determining unmet need, if their needs are being met by individual and family support, is that being met, or is that something that you shouldn't consider at all when you're determining if somebody needs a waiver? And so, and then we wouldn't want to just stop giving somebody individual and family support so that their need would go up so that they could get a waiver. And in addition, though, some of the families prefer using individual and family support to getting a waiver, because when you have a waiver, you have to get a provider agency, and perhaps have people that you don't know coming into your home. Whereas with individual and family support, because it's a cost reimbursement, the family chooses their own caregivers, and then we just reimburse the family for the money they spent.
But I thought we talked about with the son that there was something to address that, because if we spent, gave them all the supports through state general funds, then that might not be the best option. Julie, wasn't that addressed? That's somehow that's weighed in.
It should be, yes. We're in the process though of doing some additional and ongoing training for our sun screeners. We've had a little bit of turnover on there, and so we're revisiting training to make sure that happens. But yes, that is something that we've talked about needing to be able to carefully navigate for those folks who are getting that service, whether that be respite, PCA, or the vocational.
And then for Tanya, for you, you talked about that some people use the IFS to pay directly their staff, and then just they get reimbursed. But that reimbursement is a pretty low rate per hour, right? It's lower than what we pay for waivers, right?
No, the rate can be whatever the family wants it to be. If they use a provider agency, then there's going to be a set rate, but it can be a lot lower. It just depends on, what the agreement says. Not everybody pays their staff the same amount of money, but generally the agreement says, here's, like, for example, here's $3,000. If you pay your staff $15 an hour, then that means you can get this much service this fiscal year. But if you pay your staff $10 an hour, then you can get more. But we usually say, in an average, we try to work it out with them. How many hours do you need? How much are you going to pay per hour? Then, okay, we'll do an agreement for this much money. This should cover you for the fiscal year or for the time frame in which they're requesting the service. So the rate is flexible in individual and family support.
But there has to be some component where they're looking at what's the need of that person, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If the family says we only need 3 hours a day, then, we'll do the math and just do a contract for, how much money they're going to pay. And
no, I mean, like, I can't just go in and say, I want to pay $20 an hour for my son that he doesn't have this extraordinary needs where somebody needs to be paid $20 an hour. Like, they look at how complex are the needs? Because that seems like that could be like, I don't know, abused in some way.
Well, they're definitely going to, not approve $20 an hour.
Or even $15. Like, it just seems like that's a way that could be abused if it's just left up for the person to say.
But it's in the agreement and they have to turn in the invoice to us that says, you know, the person worked this much time and this is how much we paid them. So it would be the agreed upon wage. And it's going to be something reasonable. So you're right. If the person's need is high and they say, we can't find anybody to do it for less than this amount of money, then, you know, there will be some negotiations there.
Do we have any other questions about this reports or comments? Okay, if not, we can go on to the next.
Looks like Melinda Elliott has her hand.
Okay. Melinda, all right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay, great. This is different. I didn't know if I was unmuted yet or not. Oh, I see. I had to approve it. I'm sorry. And back to the people that need vocational employment supports. I guess I'm curious why those that didn't feel like they needed a provider or wanted the traffic of providers and people in their homes couldn't do self-direction if they had waiver services. It just seems like cost effectiveness should figure into whether we're using those precious state dollars or whether we're using those dollars to draw down federal dollars. I guess maybe I still don't understand.
Yeah, no, you understand, you know, and you're right. Self-direction is absolutely one of the options in waiver if they want to choose their own workers.
So then, okay, so then why are we still having such a large amount of money in the IFS funds for that area?
And we're gonna look, we'll look into that. I do think when you're talking about the vocational services, if that's all that a person needs, sometimes it might not hit the triggers that we have in place for the sun screening, but we will take that back in OCDD and at the next council meeting with, you know, Brenton, if you want to make a note to put that on the agenda, we'll make sure that we have a better response than what we're sort of struggling to do right here as we look at that, and to be able to respond to those questions. It's nuanced, and I want to make sure that we're not saying anything incorrectly, you know, and I want to get with my folks who do the sun screenings to make sure that what I'm reporting out to you guys is accurate in terms of there are some points that we ask, whether that be for IFS, like Bambi was asking about earlier, or vocational. And I want to make sure that I'm reporting back to you guys accurately what they ask for in those sunscreens. In my mind, I've got a couple of assumptions that I could make and share right now, but I don't want to inaccurately report that. So I'd rather just kind of let us take the data here. Let me work with my sunscreening folks, and by all means, we'll be prepared next time to thoroughly explain to you guys better about the vocational services. Or we see that, yes, we were doing it this way, but we need to change to do it this way. We'll be prepared to report that to you guys as well.
So just looking at here, like for the PCA contracts, like it has it budgeted for, they budgeted 441,000, and that was for 154 contracts. And I did the math, so that's like $2,864 a person. So that's really not a lot of PCA service. So, I mean, that could be the reason it's not, maybe not cost effective to put somebody in a waiver if that's all they need. But it could be that you have somebody who is getting $20,000. I don't know. So that's kind of the information that we need. Or just kind of looking at the details of it.
Can I ask one more question, Bambi?
Oh, sure, Melinda. I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
Okay, and back to the diapers, disposable undergarments, incontinence supplies. So the diapers would be mostly for adults because children can get diapers. And then the incontinence supplies might be everybody. Is that
Yeah, I would say that all of the diapers, disposable undergarments, and incontinence supplies are for adults because Medicaid covers that for kids.
so? I mean, that could be wipes and those blue pads, because I don't believe Medicaid covers those, or maybe it does, and I'm not aware.
I think it does cover the blue pads. I'm not 100% sure about the wipes.
Yes, ma'am. And in other states, if I understand, adult diapers are included in Medicaid. The reason our state doesn't, if I understand correctly, is because it wouldn't be just for people with developmental disabilities. It would be for everybody. It would have to be for everybody. Is that correct?
If we put it, so the way where it's covered for children right now is through what we call estate plan services through EPSDT. So if we put it in Louisiana, if we added adults in the same way that we add children, then it would be in our Medicaid state plan. If something is in our Medicaid state plan, then we cannot, that's correct. You have to offer it to anyone who's Medicaid eligible who would have a need for that. And so limited to just the intellectual and developmental disabled population. We have, I believe, in the past looked at whether or not we could make it a waiver service. So if it's in the waiver, then it is eligible for those folks. And I do not remember the outcome of that discussion right now. There would still be a budget or a fiscal impact if we added that as a waiver or part of durable medical equipment or something like that in the waiver. Again, it's possible, but there would be a budget impact that we would have to then have additional dollars, I think, to do that. There may be some other things. So we can add that discussion in terms of the vocational, because I also am going to look at the usage. So I know that that's been discussed a lot in the past. And I want to say it's more or less the budget impacts that have stopped us from being able to do that. Yeah.
Miss Bambi, it's Jill. I just have something professional on the DD Council.
Okay,
If
go
I
ahead,
have
Jill.
if I have the freedom to talk, I just concerned about something.
Okay, go ahead, Jill.
What are y'all talking about now? My mind is lost. I just
We're looking at the report of like a breakdown on how the individual and family support services through the Human Service District, like what is the dollar amount for like each kind of category that they're spending each year.
For the Human District Services Authority through all nonprofits, disability, and the DD Council?
No, it's the Human Service Districts, the LGEs, like Metropolitan Human Service District or Jefferson Parish Human Service District in your area.
I don't know if you know this, Miss Bambi, but through MHSD, I get waiver state services to be an asset for the ARC of G&O Uptown Community Center.
So that's what we're talking about. Like, how do they provide individual and family supports? How do they use the money they get from the state on what types of services?
Well, does that come from the feds? Every fiscal year, they have to level it out to make sure that it's compliance with the regulation?
This is state general funds. This is money they get from the state. So there might be some federal things that come into play, but this is their state money that they get.
Yeah, because like
So
I
it's
can't
doesn't have
return.
as much restriction.
Yeah, I can't return back to the ARC because of the situation, maybe April or a month before, but things, and we don't even have the virtual funding from the state. They're still trying to get that in and effect.
Right. That's what we're talking about right now is that.
Thank you, Ms.
those
Bambi.
types
Keep
of
up the
services.
hard work with the governor. I appreciate you.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions on this report? Okay. Brenton, you can switch us back to the agenda, please.
So just for my clarity purposes, the next agenda, you guys want to have something on there that talks about the IFS utilization as it relates to vocational rehabilitation services. And did you want to add the incontinence supplies as well? Or are you just kind of looking at everything?
We're going to look at everything. You guys can, decide what you want to put on the agenda, but we're going to look at the diapers, the IFS, the vocational specifically, as were questions.
Okay.
Okay, so any other question before I move on? Any other questions for OCDD? Okay, well, we've made up our time that we lost at the beginning, so now we'll go on to Office of Aging and Adult Services, which is the ARC of Louisiana, operates in Kelly Monroe. If you want to share, please.
Sure. How's everybody doing?
Hi.
Hey. So y'all should all have the report in front of you. Oh, I see that Bambi's got it on the screen. So this is our second quarter report where this quarter we served 42 people. There were some changes, but not too much. So we'll just go through them somewhat quickly. Of the 42 people, 15 of those are African-American and 27 were Caucasians. 26 of them were male and 15 females that were being served. This time we have someone who's being served in all regions. I know before we've had some issues with some of the regions where we didn't have people being served, but we do now. In Region 1, we have 5 people. Region 2, we have 7. Region 3, there are 4 people being served. Region 4, there is 2. Region 5, there is 3. Region 6, there's 2. Region 7, there's 9. Region 8, there's 3. Region 9, there's 6. And Region 10, there's 1. So of the 42 people, all of them are receiving support coordination. 33 of those are receiving personal care assistance. 3 of them are receiving rental assistance. 9 of them are receiving medical supplies or some type of medical stipend or equipment. And 2 were either vehicle or home modifications. Some of these individuals, you're probably adding up the numbers. Some of them are receiving more than one service. So that's important to know. We do have the full amount budgeted, the $907,528. You'll notice that probably not, it doesn't look like we're going to get there, but we will. All the money has been budgeted. But in this quarter, we've spent $188,930.43 on personal care assistance. $1,452.64 in rental assistance, and then $26,132.29 in medical supplies and equipment, and but that also includes vehicle and home modifications. So the total spent this quarter was $216,515.36. If we go down to the next section, this is something that Kim requested at the last meeting. She requested that we have demographics for the waiting list as well. So you'll notice that in 3 of the regions, Region 3, Region 6, and Region 10, we no longer have anybody on the waiting list. That is because we had some one-time funds available, and we served those people. That was the 26,000 of the medical supplies and stipends and home modifications. Some of the people in those regions that we did have on the waiting list are either now receiving services or received one of those one-time funds. So the majority of the people on the waiting list do reside in Region 9 with 16 people, and in Region 2, and that's 13 people.
Kelly, do you have a, just looking at these numbers, like based on like population wise, or like what's driving these numbers? Is it outreach in the area, or people getting other type of services that meets this needs? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, not everybody really knows about the SPAS program too much. I mean, we kind of reach out to other support coordination agencies to let them know about it. But right now we only have 54, I think, people. Yeah, 54 people on the waiting list. So it's not very big, but it's also not a lot of money either. So, it's a very small contract compared to the other Act 378 contracts. So, I think it's just people not knowing about it. But we do try to reach out to support coordination agencies to let them know. Also, like we also are involved in the traumatic head and spinal cord injury conference calls, and we try to let them know about it as well, because that is very limited. That contract for OAS is only, I think, a $50,000 lifetime limit per person. So we do try to let them know on that conference call also that, hey, there are some other funds that could be available to you. So I think it's just people not knowing too much about it, to be honest.
So if support coordination, if someone goes and they get connected to a support coordination agency, but let's just say they're making too much money, or they have a job, but they need this support, they make too much to qualify for the waivers because the Medicaid, the limits, the income limits, or even asset limits, then the support coordination agencies could, if they know about it, then they could tell, this would be how information is given.
Yeah, this could be another resource for them. But unfortunately, kind of like the waivers, and if someone doesn't pass away, we really don't have opportunities for people because we just have such a small amount of money. So, okay, so of those 54 people, 19 of them are African American, 28 of them are Caucasian, one person identified as biracial, and then there were 8 unknown that just chose not to put it on the application. So it was really no way for me to find out unless I was to call them, but I didn't want to get their hopes up because we didn't have services available for them. And of those people, 29 of them were males and 26 were females. So if you scroll down to the bottom, the most desired service, as usual, is the PCA services, where 43 of those people were interested in PCA services. 5 were interested in home modifications, 2 for dental, 8 for medical equipment, 2 for rental assistance, 3 for homemaker services, and 2 for therapy, whether that be speech, occupational, or physical therapy. So if we were to serve all of these people, we were estimating that we would need a little over $1 million to, but that's not state general funds. I'm not sure what that would be in state general funds. I think last time we checked, it was like a little over 500,000, maybe closer to 600,000 of state general funds. for the dollars to be matched to reach this little over 1 million, but I don't have those exact numbers. So, but that's all I got for you today. Does anybody have any questions?
Dr. McKee has her hand raised. Also, as a side, Bambi, you have lost your quorum.
Oh no.
Okay, Dr. McKee.
I just had a brief
We just
comment.
won't be able to.
That's okay. I just wanted to make a brief comment to Kelly and just say kudos to you, Kelly, for this report that you submitted this time. It seems as though you are really working hard to follow the recommendations of the DD Council members from the last time we met. I am excited to see that you did include a category of biracial on your application, and I think that should be pointed out as we are moving into the direction of, and should be already there, moving in the direction of acceptance. And so thank you so much for putting that as a category biracial. With that being said, I just had a quick question about the second quarter expenditures. If we can go back up to that page. I just wanted to know, right, thank you. I just wanted to know if you could just share with us about the increase in the amount of money that had to be utilized. I noticed in the first quarter, you under medical supplies, it was only about $7,700, but I'm noticing a significant jump. So
Yes.
maybe I missed that. Can you share with us
Sure.
and explain about that that jump?
Sure. So what was the reason why we had the jump is we had some additional funds that were not used, and we went down the waiting list and reached out to those who had one-time funds. Some of those were home modifications and some were medical equipment, so that we could serve them. And those were the ones that were missing in that on that waiting list on region 3, 6, and 10. We served the people who were in there who was they were just looking for home modifications and medical equipment. And most of them, 2 of them were roll-in showers, and 1 was a vehicle and a couple of medical supplies. And we were able to get that done so that those people now rolled off of the waiting list. Mhm.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay.
I don't see any questions in the chat or from the public. Brenton, do we have anyone with their hands raised?
Don't see any chat, and
Oh.
I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Welcome. Thank you.
Brenton, if you want to go back to the agenda. Okay. So we are at the end. Do we have any announcements? Staff?
You're really quiet, Bambi.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Oh, now yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Do we have any announcements? Anyone or staff, do we have anything? Any public comments? Okay, tomorrow is our full council meeting. What time does that start, staff? It's my calendar. Is it 8:30 or 9?
Sorry, 8:30 wouldn't let me in.
Okay, 8:30. Okay, thank you. I couldn't get out. All right, so I guess that's it. We lost our quorum, but we didn't. I don't think we had any motions. So we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you guys for being here. Thank y'all for the reports.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, Mom. No, we don't. I'm messing with your mom. I love you. Okay. Bye, Mom.